Hey people, Mitz here. Stealing from somebody, another YouTuber's intro. So the Slayer trailer just dropped in the most recent headline. And I'm going to watch the trailer, give some general thoughts about the class, and give some side-by-side comparison of PAs that were in base. So let's get going. Let's watch the trailer. Alright, so that's pretty cool. So let's get started with the side-by-side comparisons right away. So let's start with the first PA. So this first PA, it's obviously aim shot. This has 3 different stages now, and it steals some PAs from base, which we'll go over here in a second. But my initial thoughts on this PA aren't very, aren't very warm. It doesn't look very useful. It looks like a ranged attack that you can kind of use, but it takes elements from 3 PAs. So the base PA is aim shot. So aim shot, it had 3 stages in base. So it had, the uncharged version, had this charged version, and then it had this really long charged version. So it works kind of similar to how Flex Arrow works in current PSO, in current NGS, where first charge, you throw it out, second charge, it pierces, and the third charge is a really big attack. The first part looks like Tri-Impact. It's not exactly 1-to-1, but its first part is basically Tri-Impact. And then the second part looks very similar to a PA called Hailfire Kick, the little burst that shoots out. Kind of like that. The second PA, this one's new. It looks like it's going to be our single target PA on single. You use it on bosses. Don't know how cancelable it'll be, but the first part of it takes something from Ray Blade Shot. It looks very similar to Ray Blade Shot, which looks kind of like this. And the second part reminds me a lot of Strezve, which is like a combo PA. And it's just a series of fast slashes. Just in NGS, it looks like it's gonna be some shots are put in there just to spice things up. Third PA looks like it's gonna be our melee mobbing PA. Now, that first part of it, where he kind of does kind of like a Silverleaf Storm style move, where he kind of closes in, does like a double slash, that's completely new. I don't think that there's an equivalent in base. But the second part of it is, obviously, it's Side Swiper Slash. Looks very similar, you can see. Has that big combo, and then you do a shot at the end. This fourth PA, it's Bomber Tosh. Woo, we love Bomber Toss. It's coming back, and it looks like it has a guard frame from this little shield that pops up in front of him. We all love we all love Bomber Toss. Bomber Toss is a PA in base PSO2 that kind of had iframes. It had iframes, and you used it to dodge. Same thing with Ray Blade Shot. Also had a guard frame on that first slash. And as well, Strezve had a very, very small guard frame and that little initial kick. Since and Gunblade and base PSO2 didn't really have any way to dodge attacks. It didn't have weapon action counter. It didn't have a step counter because that wasn't a universal thing in base PSO2. Moving on, we have the normal attacks. So let's see here. We have Slayer normals. They look run of the mill. It's a 3-step 1, 2, 3, 1, maybe 4, 1, 2, 3. Doesn't look like there's anything special from it. There's no follow up. And it's basically your run-of-the-mill normals. They don't look anything special. Gun slashes normals weren't anything special in base, and they won't really be anything special here unless they add it later, which is completely possible. You get like a 4th normal that pretty much every melee class has. We also have Slash, Rise, and Fall, which is, I'm very surprised to make a return. Did not expect this to make a return, but this is cool. Gives a little bit more mobility to melee classes, which I think this class might need to. Didn't look like it had like a standardized gap closer. And basically, Slash, Rise, and Fall in base PSO2, it was a tool that you could use to get up or get down. And for the first part, you can only use Slash Rise after an attack, but Slash Fall, I believe you could use it anytime, or you couldn't use it anytime. If you jumped up and just pressed spacebar, it wouldn't work. But it worked after an attack, so that's pretty cool to see that return. Then we have Slayer Time. Slayer Time, the new PB. It looks pretty cool. It looks short and sweet, which I like. And then we have the Photon Blast. Basically Luster Time Finish 2.0 looks cool. Here's Luster Time in base. Luster Time looks like this. You press the button. And so Luster Time in base, it wasn't really anything special, at least compared to its Scion counterpart. So what happened when you pressed Luster Time is it would give you your field. So every Gunblade element, so Baron style, Full Metal style, and Zandy style, they all had different fields that you could give. So, for example, Baron style gave you a super armor and a damage reduction shield. Full Metal gave you a field that would hover around you and do damage. And Zandy style gave you like a chaser, kind of similar to how the chaser arrow is in NGS. You could charge it up and it does follow-up attacks for you. Luster Time basically did that, and it refilled your meter. So in NGS and PSO2, Luster had a special meter where you could hold down a PA and do extra damage. So what do I think about Slayer? So Slayer looks interesting. It's not exactly what I expected it to be. I expected it to be a little bit more hype, like a little bit more similar to Luster, but it's not. It takes elements of both base Gunblade and Luster. So what I'm not happy about seeing return is Aim Shot and Bomber Toss. I didn't really like those PAs in base. I think that the Luster equivalents are much cooler and provide much more utility and just spice things up. So the first Luster PA, there was a PA where you could hold down a button and it would hit a line in front of you and it was a ranged attack. It was pretty cool. I think that it's way better than Aim Shot. It's a nice ranged option. The second one was Scatter Fire Slug, which is it. Basically, the stay version would like kind of like boost you back, like a really quick attack that would boost you back, and then the move action was kind of like you sprayed everyone in front of you and then went up at the same time. And the second part of a Scatter Fire Slug while you were moving would like kind of backflip you. So those were interesting ranged options, especially the Stay Art Scatter Fire Slug would kind of boost you backwards. I thought that was a really cool PA because you could use it in between your counters. But that's Aim Shot and Bomber Toss don't really do the same thing for me. I think that kind of trying to mesh the two playstyles from base Gunblade doesn't work because when in base PSO2, pretty much after we got all the crafted PAs, the star of the show for Gunblade was the melee PAs. You would use Ray Blade Shot a lot. You would use Rage Dance. You would use Strezve, and those would be like your basic. You would use those PAs just those are your bread and butter, and you would rarely use bomber toss or aim shot, even with the utility bomber toss had. You could just use ray blade shot, and it would accomplish nearly the same thing. Aim shot, it's strong, but it's not exactly exciting. It's exactly like how flex arrow is on Braver. It's just a PA that you shoot, and it shoots range damage, and then the big charge is a lot of damage. What I'm hoping to see with the Slayer class is firstly the return of the meter. So I think the meter is what actually made the class really interesting. Otherwise, it was just your box standard melee class. And in the trailer, it looks like a majority of the PAs had 2 steps to them. So the second PA, which was like the single target one, looks very similar. It looks like there was a first part of it, which was Ray Blade shot, and then you could hold it. I'm not sure. And then the third PA, which is like the mobbing melee PA, kind of had like the first part was like a double slash with some movement, and then the second part was, second or third part even is kind of like side swiper slash. So I'm hoping that the meter sees a return. If not, that's kind of disappointing, because I think right now that most of the melee classes kind of all run the same MO, which is I threw all my PAs out and then I press a counter whenever an attack comes to me. There's not really anything interesting to separate the classes other than maybe some minor things. So I'm hoping that Slayer brings that back. What I'm also hoping is that Slayer brings something interesting to the subclass meta. So right now, NGS has really watered down subclasses. The subclasses are very one note. There's only really 4 or 5 viable subclasses, which is Force, Gunner, Bouncer, Fighter, and maybe Tector. So Force Gunner is basically, I need PP regen, and I want my class to be comfy. So those are the 2 subclasses you use in basically every piece of content if you want to be comfy. Fighter and Bouncer are your damage subclasses. So Fighter would give you 5% on downs, and Bouncer gives you elemental down factor and physical down factor. You get those faster, and you get 3% damage, 1% for every apart you break on the enemy, which is situationally useful. It's useful in Stia Purple. It's very popular, and you get the use of Soaring Blades and using Fanatic Blade, which is a nice 440 potency per second that you can use, and it doesn't cost any PP, so it's a good option for, say, Braver. Tector is also like, there's nothing really interesting about it. You can use it if you are getting an extra PB. Say you're doing a speed run, and that taking a Tector sub would get you an extra PB in that fight, which is huge. It'd be a bigger damage increase than obviously Fighter and Bouncer, but it's just really boring at the moment. Now, Lester in base PSO2 actually brought something very interesting to the subclass meta, albeit it was really OP as a subclass. I'm not denying that. Lester had a system called Voltage, and every time you got a hit, it would build up this voltage. So it would cap at 500 voltage. 500 voltage would give you some benefits, so it would give you some crit rate, I believe, some crit, PP reduction, I believe. Sorry, not PP reduction. Those were separate skills, but it was interesting. It changed a lot of classes. So it changed Braver Bow. Braver Luster was a standard for Bow, and it changed it for Fighter because it would give Fighter Double Saber a lot of damage, and would give it some PP reduction, which it needed a lot. So I'm hoping that when Slayer as a subclass will be interesting, it'll shake up the subclass meta. Maybe they'll bring back the voltage system. I'm not sure, or maybe they'll give it something interesting like the PP reduction. So Luster had 2 different skills. It had one skill that reduced your PP, reduce the cost of PPs when you use the same PA, and when you use different PAs. So it was really good for Partisan. Partisan had really big PP issues. So I'm hoping that maybe Slayer will alleviate some of the PP issues that some classes clearly have. So, for example, I think Fighter Double Saber has a huge PP problem. You only get 7 to 10 PP from doing a weapon action counter, which is not nearly enough. Well, Braver over here has, you press weapon action and you do the follow-up attack, you get like 50 PP back, and then Fearless Attitude gives you like 80. So I'm hoping maybe Lester brings some of that to the melee classes, which they really need something. to make PP a bit easier. That's not just Force and Gunner, because Gunner is kind of worthless as a sub PP wise, solely because there are not many attacks that count as active PP recovery. Not even Hunter Sword Attack Alteration, and Force is just obviously it's good for mobbing. You know you can just sit there and you spam PAs whenever a mob dies, you get PP back, which is good. And then the passive regen works for a lot of classes. So I'm kind of hoping it shapes with the meta. Overall, like I said, I'm not. It's not riveting to me. Like it's not as hype as I thought it would be. I'm not happy about the return of some range PAs and then kind of having this double play style that might not work. But we'll see when we get more details on the class. But otherwise, thanks for watching my little ghetto video slash unscattered, unorganized thoughts on Slayer and how it compares to Luster. Thanks for watching. If you want to stick around, I will maybe plan to make some video essays on NGS and some of the outlying issues it has, such as quality of life. So if you want to stick around for that, I guess you can. I'm not making any promises, but otherwise, once again, thanks for watching and have a nice day.